Okay, Gabe, Tristan, welcome guys. So back to fully convinced. We're cranking through the study, and this week is lesson 10. So before we dive in, just open with a quick word of prayer. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we do not worship you as we ought, only as we are able. We acknowledge that you've made all things, you control all things, and you reveal everything that we know. We ask that you give us grace and equip us to think your thoughts after you, to build our worldview based on the wisdom of your self-attesting word, and to not lean on our own understanding. Give us the skill to apply our minds to the words of truth, which give us certainty from which we derive it, so that we may declare words of certainty to those who are lost. And Lord, we ask that you would sharpen us through this study. Um, Help us have the stamina and discipline to sharpen our mind, and each as much as people focus on working on their body and being physically fit but mentally flabby. We acknowledge the demand to be disciplined in our thinking. So we pray that you'd bring that about through this study. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All righty, so I'm going to share applications. So let's go ahead and share mm, there it is. Is this hard for me to see from there? Yeah, that's the study guide. Let me share the study guide just so I can go. Yeah, here we are. In the study guide, I've made an addition to it. Let me just move my control bar out of the way. Sorry for all this. Okay, so last week we did lesson 9. We talked about universals. We had our slide, talked about the three medieval positions. Uh, for somebody just watching this randomly without having seen any of the previous lessons, we're going through a catechism on the presuppositional apologetic of Dr. Cornelius Van Til, his student, Dr. Greg L. Bonson, who I actually was fortunate to study with. And these are Christian intellectuals who are very accomplished. They're professional philosophers, were professional philosophers, past tense. They got paid to do it. I'm a layperson. I'm an amateur in that nobody pays me to philosophize, and I've got Tristan and Gabe here who are in the same boat. And so the goal of this catechism is to help lay people appeal to Christian scholarship in the method of defending the faith, um, in the manner that Dr. Van Til taught, which, he argued was a reformed and biblical method. And so that's just a friendly reminder that, we're just iron sharpening iron. So some of this gets pretty advanced, can be complex. This week in lesson 10, in Zooming for you, Gabe, we have dialectical tension. Have you guys ever even heard of that prior to Gabe? You probably heard it on tape from Bonson at some point.
Oh,
Did you know what
yeah.
it was when you heard it?
Yeah, it's like regional accents, right?
Bada
uh,
boom boom.
yeah. No, I when I heard it from Bonson, I felt I understood what he was talking about just because I had so much context along with it.
Yeah,
And so uh but I was just being very curious etymologically today, looking
yeah,
at the word. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We're gonna cover that. Um, it's an advanced term. It's a philosophical term, but when you do the etymology of it, it makes sense. So, because I had goofed up on the study guide, I moved this dialectical tension. There was no Calvinism in it. I had them merged, and so I broke lesson 10 and 11. That used to be one. I broke it into two. That's way too much. In fact, This week, we're basically going to be going through how you conduct an internal critique. We've been talking about the fact that the methodology, we have our ASMG, which way back in lesson one was our intro. The A was attitude, the S was starting point, the M was method, and the G was the goal. And in the method, we reviewed and learned that it was an indirect apologetic, a form of indirect argument. We're comparing worldviews. That's the method of arguing by presupposition. What does this worldview presuppose? What's the Christian worldview presuppose? What do they accomplish? And so, in that Proverbs 26, 4 and 5, answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. The internal critique is the second part of that second verse, where we don't want them to be wise in their own conceit. So we have to go in and do destructive work in their worldview for their own benefit, and show them that they're, living on borrowed capital and that they're saying things that contradict each other. That's where we're going to today with the dialectical tension is we're going into their worldview and we're going to show them these tensions. Now, you don't have to use this word. You can say dialectical tension. You can say a contradiction. You can say equivocation. Um,
Conflict.
in fact, if you think about it, um, if you say a contradiction, most people know what that is. Against, speak, right? Speak against. You could say contradiction. You could say um, an equivocation, which is just another synonym for it, right? That's speak, speaking out of both sides of your mouth. Or you can use this advanced term, dialectical tension. They all mean basically the same thing. So if you think about a diameter of a circle, right, is that's the line that goes from edge to edge of the circle, right? So dia, across, meter, measure. So dialectical is to speak across. So you've got a spectrum of affirmation and negation, and a dialectical tension says yes, no. Okay, so we're going to now look for that in this nine questions, and it's pretty much the same thing over and over again. I think this will be fun, and I'm glad, honestly, this will be your participation. We won't be bogged down in some of the basics. We can go more to the meat. So I'm going to stop sharing this piece. We're going to go to share the other, and let me just go share. Let's go. This must be the actual catechism. Nope. Fat finger fails. Stop share. Okay, so let me close that window so I don't have to look at it anymore and it won't be available to share. Now let me do it again. Okay, share, and we'll do this here. Bingo. Okay, now I'm going to center this. All righty. So we are on question 115. So we've already defined a dialectical tension. Again, we're going to go look for internal critique, and you can't do an internal critique or help them see it if you don't know how to look for it. So this is a good skill. How do I look for internal critique? And if you practice this, you just get better at it. So I'm going to use Dr. Margaret Mead, who wrote a famous book on moral relativism. We're gonna do an internal critique on this. So she wrote a book called Coming of Age, 1928. This was a kind of a groundbreaking work that challenged the paradigm of ethnocentrism, that one culture's ethics were superior to another's. And so she goes to, Papua New Guinea, Tonga, South Pacific Islands. She saw adolescent girls sleeping with older men, not married.
Can I interject real quick, Adam?
Yeah,
Um,
you need it bigger.
no, I was just going to say I took a cultural anthropology class.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, and I learned all about ethnocentrism
Oh, okay.
back in my college days,
Ah,
and so this was really good to review for me.
oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, so cultural relativism, there's no moral absolute. Morals are relative to culture. And so, Dr.
And we did
Bonson.
discuss meat, by the way. Sorry, we did
Yeah,
discuss her name did came come up.
yes. Well, Dr. Bonson said, all right, so let's do the internal critique. If ethics aren't objective, universal, and invariant, then they're subject to geographic or cultural, aka regional conditioning. Let's apply that, the first example, to a seventh grade math teacher, and the students answer a test with, they provide different answers to the problems. Would we conclude that math is relative because the participants determined their own personal view of correct math? I mean, that's absurd. No one believes that. People can talk that way, and this is part of the checklist. They can't live that way.
We can't
So
live that
part
way.
of the internal critique is to see the hypocrisy between what someone's theory is and then the way they live, their practice, right? And we touched on this earlier about the relativism when I talked last week about the atheist professor that convinces the class about relativism, and the Christian student says, "Well, if it's all relative, just change my C to an A," right? So you can say everything's relative, you can't live that way. I think the second example, beyond the seventh grade math teacher, is telling. So think of on Mead's thesis, should we have resisted Martin Luther King Jr.'s civil rights revolution? I mean,
Yeah, we should have. And the
oh,
other,
we should not, we should have resisted it. Yes,
yes, we
we
should
should have
have.
gone along with it because we'd say slavery is a feature of Americana,
And to the question of the math example, right?
Mhm.
About the A to an F, you know, not only, of course, not only is it wrong, but it renders the entire thought meaningless. Meaning it renders the grading system and issuing a grade meaningless.
Yeah,
So why even give a grade since they're relative, and
yeah,
so yeah, so it makes it really meaningless. It removes away,
yeah,
it takes away you know the the meaning of it, right? The what the significance of earning a top
yeah.
grade or a better grade. Yeah, so that's exactly what I was thinking. It
Yeah,
makes a mess out of things, doesn't it?
Well,
why
so
why have a scale?
I
Why
mean,
have a scale exactly?
well, it's also self-refuting in the sense that going to Papua New Guinea and coming back with this new insight and pitching it to everyone in America would be contrary to the same view. It's like, why are you going to tell everyone to not think this way,
Right.
right? When you're saying regional ethics are free to be regional.
Yeah.
But like who cares about Papua New Guinea if you're going to say this? You shouldn't say
Yeah.
anything at all, actually.
Why isn't ethnocentrism just
That's
one of
it.
the options?
Yeah, Tristan, that's the same, right? It's the same thing we're saying. Why have a grading system?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, because it's just, it's the same, it's just self-refuting right from the start because of what she's saying. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, it's all relative, so who cares that you're telling us that it's relative? Like you're basically saying it's true,
Yeah.
but we have to accept that that's true, but not the other truths, right? Right? Like this
self-refuting is
view.
the key word.
I think the most common example, in fact, in the Bonson-Stein debate, when this issue of moral relativism comes up, the common reductio ad absurdum is Adolf Hitler, right?
Yeah.
Defining in the Third Reich the final solution, one race superior to another, justifies genocide. Uh, it's interesting in that debate because you could see Stein's response, unfazed by Greg's rebuttal, was simply, well, they defined how did he say it? Said Hitler was not allowed to do that because he was part of um, Western geopolitical culture. To which Greg, just said, on according to whose standard? It's just arbitrary, And then he brings up the Marquis de Sade. The Marquis de Sade enjoyed torturing women, you know? What are you going to say to that? And what about
Well,
women
yeah,
that are being tortured, right?
you
Where's
certainly
the
can't
objective
live.
morality?
Well, yeah, and you can't certainly can't live a regional ethic because neighbor to neighbor that falls apart, like
Yeah.
within this neighborhood. Like one neighbor's ethic conflicts with another neighbor's ethic, and it's like you cannot effectively live out that way unless your ethic covers the complexities of that variation, right? Which
Yeah.
is the Christian ethic.
I mean, the absurdities in examples are innumerable. I mean, can you imagine walking into your neighbor's house,
Yeah.
taking his wife and say, "Well, to you it's adultery. To me, it's just loving my neighbor."
Yeah. Exactly.
It really is absurdity.
Yeah, you got no claim against the Norsemen, the Vikings pillaging,
Yeah.
Right.
right?
But yeah, and then the thing is the guttural reaction anyone would have if they were confronted with that happening in front of them, or if like a kid was being molested. Like
Yeah.
the guttural reaction is the Lord's creation testifying to, his truths, right?
Yeah.
But they don't know how to recognize it unless the Holy Spirit enlightens their eyes.
Okay, so we're talking about dialectical tensions. They can be metaphysical, they can be epistemological, they can be ethical. We just dealt with an ethical one. You say all is relative, but then you want to correct American culture as being unjustified to claim superiority. Well, they should be unjustified to claim superiority. So that was a dialectical tension. I see an ethical tension. We're going to now go look at another one in the garden.
So, Adam, I heard one real quick. I've
Yeah.
heard people argue against American exceptionalism, the idea of
Uh-huh.
American exceptionalism. How would talk us through that one? So, normally, I they, we're exceptional because there's no one else like us. They're not put
Hmm.
together like us. They don't have our constitution, right? They may have
Yeah.
elements of our constitution in their own, but we have that unique experience of our founding and our
Hmm.
documents. But they would argue that we're not exceptional because that for us to make that claim that we are elevating ourselves over others in
Hmm.
an unjust or unjustifiable way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably goes beyond the answer of, just refuting relativism, defending American exceptional. I do think America in God's providence is exceptional. All the critiques of, deistic forefathers and whatnot aside, I mean, you can't get our jurisprudence and constitution without reference to scripture. I think the biggest thing I laugh about is you'll talk to somebody who's a skeptic, who's secular, and they think they invented the separation of church and state when it came from, the Reformation, especially um, the Westminster Confession, John Calvin and the Westminster Divines after him, um, arguing for the separation of church and state because God had a separate sphere. Well, America's founded on all that, uh, the forebears from the Protestant Reformation on, and to discredit that or to reinterpret it as if, it's like I'm going to plagiarize that, and then hospitals were created because of Christianity.
So, I've heard some people argue that there is no such thing as it's impossible to have a separation from church, from church and state. You can't really separate them because it's just a matter of whose church is going to be in the mix here. It's
Well,
either,
you'd separate them, authoritative, the authorities, right? Separation of church and state doesn't mean separation of God and state.
but that's how people run, right? They run to that
Yeah.
conclusion.
Here's a fun fact. In the
Right.
1640s, the Long Parliament commissioned the Westminster Assembly. It was not an ecclesiastical commission. In other words, the church didn't all get together and go, "Hey, we need to build a confession." It was the imagine Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and some prominent Republican. Imagine Congress coming and going, "We need an updated confession of the Christian faith so we can worship with purity." Can you imagine our government asking the churches to bring together the most learned and godly men to meet
Well,
1,163 times over 4 years to hammer out a confession of what the church believes, and you're doing so through political power? I laugh when people talk about separation of church and state, and I tell them that whole confession was an act of parliament.
well, the problem with the separation of church and state in rhetoric is the only church they're talking about is the Christian church. They're not talking about any of the other churches of thought or religion.
Yeah.
So, like, they're not embracing, oh, there should be a separation of atheism in the state
Mhm.
too. There should be a
Mhm.
separation of, mysticism in the state too. They're not being fair and
Well, they don't
trying
wear,
to
yeah,
affect.
because they don't wear the label, right, Tristan? They don't,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
atheists
I'm not
don't,
religious because I'm a
right,
mystic. It's like,
right,
oh, wait,
yeah.
mystics are
Even
a
though in
religion too. Like,
1937, the Humanist Manifesto, which John Dewey signed, he's one of the signatories, declared it to be an atheist religion, right?
mhm.
So whenever somebody tells you atheism is the absence of religion,
And then
yeah,
is that
Yeah.
John Dewey, the father of pragmatism?
yeah, you can look that up. All right, we got on our tangent, but that's okay. That was a good tangent. Let's go to the next tension. Question 117. So we're going to go slow through this. This is Van Til. You can hear him present this in Modern Theology Lecture number 1. He says this a couple times. So in the garden, when Satan contradicted God, quote, "You will not surely die," end quote, the underlying assumption was God doesn't know. Yet only God was in a position to know. Neither Satan nor Eve were in a position to know. So let's pause. Tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The day you eat of the tree, you will surely die. The serpent's temptation, the subtlety and deceitfulness is to question what God declared. And Van Til is saying that Satan, a creature, what's going on in this transaction is Satan is going to destroy the creator creature distinction. He's going to undermine it. And he's doing so by saying, God's not all knowing. He's not omniscient. He's finite, just like me and you. And so, in fact, Van Til will colorfully add, and this is why he's hard to follow, because he'll go from like some theoretical abstract, and then he'll go into an analogy like, well, we've checked Yale, we've checked Harvard, and we checked University of Chicago, and there's no studies yet. Like nobody knows if when you eat of this fruit that a death will occur. So I see what the serpent's saying. There's no data out there. We've got to get the data before we can write. And he's going to go bring in some empiricism. So let's keep going. Satan insinuated pure contingency. That means chance. Nobody knows. It's random into the heart of man. And by doing so, he demoted God's knowledge, omniscience, to man's level, finite. Or antithetically, he promoted his knowledge to God's level. In either case, trying to erase the creator creature distinction. So Van Til asked this question: how could Satan know what only God could know? God's omniscient. He said you're going to die. Now, I believe it's still yet future in the catechism when I talk about um, Eve and the temptation in the garden, uh, how she was an evidentialist because there was no data. She said, I'm not going to believe based on God's self-attesting word, don't eat, you'll die. I've got a counterclaim that says I need to test it, and I'm going to test it. And the moment she said, I will decide if somebody dies or not. That's the moment of autonomy. That's the moment of rebellion. And in seed form, and then it came to blossom when she ate, and sins conceived.
So let's just hypothetically, why do you guys think she would entertain this? Is it because had she not run into the devil before? I mean, you think there was an encounter before that he had to build up some kind of credibility with her,
Yeah.
you know?
Uh, I don't know, Gabe, and I'm not going to hypothesize just because
I, yeah,
the scripture doesn't say. The the next sentence here, this is the key because this is a dialectical tension. The assertion, then you and I talked about this. The assertion, quote, nobody knows, is irrational. Now, why is it irrational? Well, if nobody knows, then there's no reason. That's why it's irrational. But then to say that you know that nobody knows is simultaneously a rational claim. You have to know a universal negation. You have to know that nobody knows.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is a tension. There's a claim that no one knows, but then the person claiming that no one knows is saying that they do know.
Now, when he tempted her, am I correct? The language is he was just questioning what God had stated,
Yes,
right? He wasn't saying that God didn't know. He was just saying, he was
using,
asserting
he,
doubt. Has God
he was denying that God, the
had
creator
said
creature
that?
distinction, that God's omniscient. He made Eve, he made the world, he knew what would happen, he declared what would happen. Satan said, he's not the person that you think he is. He's not omniscient. It has to be tested. Surely you won't die. And so
But
he
the
claimed
text,
that God can't know.
but the text, his question,
yeah,
Satan's question was, from my reading,
Hmm.
speaking to Eve, hath God truly said?
Hmm.
right. And so I think what we're talking about here is understanding that Satan was leading Eve to that thought that God doesn't know.
That's right.
It's not that
He,
we're saying the text says it directly. It's that he was indirectly trying to
oh, it's an
deceive her to
implication.
think of that. Yeah.
Yeah. He's getting her to infer, surely God doesn't know. God's not omniscient. Has he
Mm.
truly said, can God know? Right?
By
It needs to
asking her
be
the question,
tested.
by asking her the question, she was having to accept, hey, I can judge and decide what the answer to that question is, right?
Right.
The
Let's
ultimate
Right,
loaded
that's what's
question.
happening.
appeal to
Right.
her autonomy. She
It
should have
was
said, get thee behind me, right?
it
She
was the
had to
ult-
believe that she had to believe she could know better than God, basically, to decide to do and eat from it, which is what Cornelius Van Til's getting at, I think.
it
It's
was the ultimate loaded question, right?
Yeah.
yeah, but I also was going to say on the note of the like why she entertained the devil or whatever. I
Mm.
think there's a hint at that in um the New Testament where it says Adam was like
She was
He
well
was
sin came to
deceived
the
first.
well no, but the Bible says that sin came through Adam.
Yes.
So what I think that alludes to is the responsibility of him and how he didn't protect his wife from that.
Yeah. Passivity, right? Where was he?
well,
Like
and
why wasn't
also
he?
Eve.
Yeah.
Also, Eve came from Adam, so that's another
Right.
way
So
of looking at
I
it.
in my kind of view of it, it was like he entertained it because the husband wasn't defending the family, you know, and he
Yeah.
had been told by God first, you know, and knew God longer.
Okay. So the reason this one's included is because it's seminal. At the very beginning, there was a dialectical tension, and Van Til points that out. We covered an ethical one. We've got something that's epistemological. We're going to introduce in question 118. This one I use a lot. This one's very practical. The other ones you might have to just noodle on for a bit. Listen to Van Til, Modern Theology Lecture 1, and just let him present his case for what's going on in the garden. And then go read John Bunyan, The Holy War. It deals with that whole transaction with allegory. It's quite good, where the village of Mansell Okay, so 118. How does determinism and free will introduce a dialectical tension? Tristan, when I was in Spokane with you at Gillert's home, I forget the young guy, but I remember I presented, he's Roman Catholic, and I remember presenting this to him, and he had his little epiphany. Like, this one's a little more accessible. So let's look at it. Determinism, everything's run by law, one in many, everything's one. Everything's controlled, everything's all matter, it's all governed by law. Okay. And free will, unpredictability, produces a dialectical tension. So
And
unbelievers need the world to be predictable. Why? So they can have science. Remember when I said earlier in the study, I said, why did, or no, it was in one of my apologetics responses. I had said that Aeschylus and Euripides were Greek tragedian poets. Well, they believed that the universe was governed by the gods, the fates, and there was no law that controlled historical eventuation. It was all governed by deities. So you couldn't do science. Why? Because you never knew what they were going to predict. Gravity might work one day, but not the next, right? And so that's why they wrote poetry. You wouldn't do science if you didn't think or believe in the uniformity of nature. All right, so as a determinist, I want science to work. I need predictability. In order to get predictability, everything's got to be governed by natural law. This is all fine. Yeah, what's the problem? Well, then we continue. I also need the world to be unpredictable, free, to account for the dignity of man and his ability to choose. So when we say unpredictable, we're talking about this mental freedom up here. We call it volition. And the real question is, do we have free will? If we don't have free will, if, as the atheist says, everything's made of matter, it's just in motion, and we're going to give evidence for our position, then is our evidence really evidence? Because we're not free to choose. That's just how our brain is programmed, right? In the middle, it says, the atheist, for him, man doesn't have a mind, just has a brain. Chance soup inside the cranium, the gray matter, governed by natural law. If true, this would make free will an illusion, and some atheists defend that position. Sam Harris is outspoken on this. Anybody that's a biological determinist, okay, the effects that you see that appear as decisions you made are actually generated by antecedent causes in this causal chain. And if we could go back and if I could see your DNA and the synaptic connections in your brain, I could predict what you're going to do. Predict what I'm going to say next. I haven't added much to this study. I'm basically quoting most of the time something from Van Til and something from Monson, but I did add this line coming up. I said, the reductio ad absurdum immediately follows. If free will is an illusion, the evidence for saying it's an illusion is an illusion, right? And this is how Greg would debate a materialist. He'd know that he was going to cling to science. He's an empiricist. There's nothing immaterial. Well, that means because he's now a monist, he's gotten rid of the creator-creature distinction. He wants all to be one. He's destroyed freedom, right? Because he doesn't want a universe of chaos because he's over here spending all his time talking about we need facts, data, hard science. So he knows right away he's given up the unpredictability and therefore human dignity, personal choice, freedom are all going to have to be sacrificed. So we bring that up in the tension. This is a dialectical tension. Okay, I see that you believe in predictability. So if I'm made of matter and you're made of matter, and then we're governed by natural law, then when you tell me that's true, it's not because you have evidence for that position. You had to say it because you're controlled by natural law. And therefore, if we continue on, I guess we should get rid of all our prisons because no one has free will. Therefore, there's no accountability, no need. It's just the strong eat the weak and might makes right. So what you're doing is showing them that by giving up the unpredictability of the universe, the indeterminism of the universe, they're undermining their ability to make decisions every day. And then you just have to let them face the music. Actually, this came up between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson in their debate. And Jordan Peterson, he's not a Christian apologist, but he pointed this out. To which, Harris has a happy inconsistency, and this is one where they tend to just get grandiloquent with their thick vocabulary and, you know, uh, engage in these dialectical tensions and
Yeah.
doublespeak. But, somebody
So
like a Greg would
I'm
sit
so
there and
smart.
hammer it out.
See how smart I sound.
You wouldn't. That's one of the reasons you need to know this stuff. So when they pull these terms, you may not remember, oh, dialectical tension. I know that's like an equivocation. You'll know they're trying to intellectually bully you or just um, use verbal legerdemain, like sleight of hand to get out of being cornered.
but even Adam, even so when these materialists
Hmm.
when they cite natural law, right?
Yes.
Um, they have no way to to make sense of it, to justify it.
Hmm.
I mean, even before we talk any further, right? They can account for natural law.
That's right.
So if we does it make sense to approach them on that question right up front and say, wait a minute, you're talking about natural law.
Yeah. Well, how did you get natural law from an explosion?
That's the
Big thing.
yeah, that's kind of where my
Hmm.
I want to go. I want to say, well, wait,
This.
I'll love to talk about natural law, but let's talk about natural law for a second. Whatever, how can you make sense of natural law? How do you know there is even
Mhm.
such a thing?
Yeah. This is why I favor dialogue, uh, whether it be spaced in a comment section in social media or at a coffee shop or at a park, talk to somebody, versus, formal debate. Because the idea is to ask questions to get them to consider versus, in a public debate, people, their ego's on the line. They've got to look smart. They're not going to admit they're wrong. And you basically have two teams, like two football teams, and any ball that hits the line, one team, they both see it in their favor, right? There's just too much bias and whatnot. But to learn how to ask these questions in conversation is so much more effective. And you practice it and you can bring
Yeah.
them up. Um,
Yeah, my dad used to always tell me, and I thought this was a really good one, but is you praise in public and you rebuke in private. And when it
yeah.
comes to these kinds of challenges of philosophy where people can become exposed and vulnerable, it doesn't go over very well
Yeah.
in debate format unless
Right.
you're both purposely coming to that,
Yeah.
to debate for an audience and like you're both agreeing to do that
Yeah.
professionally, right? Like Greg Bonson would do. But in most
Right.
cases, that social media debate, it's just everyone's got their ego up and they want to
Exactly.
protect their confidence and their value. And if you break it down in front of everyone, they're just like they're not going to go with that.
The lead singer of the 80s rock band, The Police, Sting, released a solo album. And one of the songs I think was All This Time. And I always liked one of the lyrics in that song was men go crazy in congregations. They only get better one by one. And when people are in public being challenged, that's why you can look at these college campuses. You'll see Cliff Connectley or Dinesh D'Souza or Charlie Kirk, right? It's one of the things I really liked about Charlie Kirk, the fact that he would set his microphone down on the table and just let them talk. But you'd see the all of the collective collegial pressure from the audience, with the verbal participation, as people are trying to formulate their concepts and respond to Charlie. Um, as far as a public forum, I think that's about as good as I've seen it get in terms of creating some transparency on both sides. Um, when I watch a debate or listen to a debate between Greg and one of his opponents, that's where the debaters aren't there really for themselves. They're there for those in the audience and they're trying to persuade them. So, all right, let's Let's conclude. Uh, if you thought about a university, so we're talking about dialectical tension, university, which is comes from we can credit
The one and the many.
the one and the many, the uni and the versity, right? So the idea of a university was to develop a unity out of diversity, and although we probably don't agree with a lot of Thomas Aquinas's philosophy, the fact that he, like Plato and Aristotle, was a systematizer and had a grand philosophy, has to be respected. So much of what he contributed. Um, and at that era, you did have people bringing unity out of diversity, right? Last week we studied the realists, the nominalists, the conceptualists. There was a discussion around the one and the many and university. So now think about the modern university. And Greg brings this up. It's really a multiversity. It's not a university. A multiversity full of dialectical tension. And so the example that Greg gave on one of his lectures was, think about it. You go to a psychology class where you're taught man is like a white rat because you're being taught behaviorism. You don't have free will. You're just subject to electrochemical stimulus response. And then the bell rings, no pun intended, but like Pavlov's dog, you move on to political science. And now you learn that man has freedom, um, and he has an obligation to improve the lot in life for fellow citizens. We shouldn't participate in foreign wars, whatever have you, right? And so what you have is, again, this dialectical tension. Am I a white rat controlled by electrochemical stimulus response? Or am I a dignified human in the image of God with freedom and
Right.
dignity, right? So a university doesn't exist anymore. The modern university is a multiversity. Um, the next one, we're just repeating. We're learning how to do an internal critique. We're looking for ways uh, to listen to someone give their worldview, and then, like a good diagnostician, a
Mhm.
good physician, we can go, I see the conflict. Okay, so this next one is actually would be is I throw it in here because I find it interesting. I haven't mastered the square of opposition with the contradictories and the contrarieties. This is, if you're going to spend some time doing critical thinking, this is something that you would explore. So the square of opposition in the diagram that you see here, it reveals a rational irrational tension in the non-Christian worldview contrasted with the harmony of the Christian worldview. So the trick here, the key is on the left, we have Christianity. On the right, boxes 3 and 4, we have unbelief. The claim is that both have an irrational pole and a rational pole. Now, that might uh, strike you in that you'd refer or admit that there's something irrational about Christianity. What that means, and let me just read through it, the boxes. So we have Christians can formally be described as irrational because we rely on something outside of our mind. Okay, so let's pause. Are we omniscient as individuals? No.
No.
Okay, so then we'd have to say we don't know. We're not omniscient. Our knowledge is subject to contingency. Therefore, we can't know anything for sure. Remember back to our whites, all swans are white analogy. But we learned one day there's black swans. We thought they were all white. We learned that our previous knowledge was wrong. Oops, it never actually was knowledge, justified true belief. It was just a belief that was unjustified, right? So we're stuck. It's irrational. But then we have a rationalism. And our rationalism is that, yeah, we're not omniscient, but God is. And he reveals what he knows, some of it, to us. So we know that he knows everything. And therefore, when he reveals something to me, like he speaks with authority, he's got the whole jigsaw puzzle in his head and he can show me pieces of it. And to the degree that I reconstruct in my mind what he knows originally in his mind, I can claim to have a justified true belief.
So the difference between the Christian and the non-Christian is that is that the Christian is relating his conception, whereas the non-Christian is relating his conception of knowledge, right? But the believer is relating the knowledge of someone else.
Yeah, it's just revelation, Gabe.
It's
Because of
derivative.
revelation, we as Christians are not equivocating. We're not saying that it's irrational. It might be irrational to us, but it's not irrational to God. God knows all. And the reason we can be rational is because God's ultimately rational and he reveals some of what he knows to us. Look at the non-Christian position. In box three, they say our mind is limited, it's finite, nobody can know anything for sure. But then they turn around and say God doesn't exist and they behave that their mind is sufficient, autonomous, adequate, right? So they start to make knowledge claims. They don't live consistently with their irrationalism. They then go out and start to assert things which are alleged rational
Okay, so yeah,
knowledge.
I see. So
So they got tension in there.
I see the contradiction from 3 and 4 now.
Yeah, there's tension in there. Mind's limited, can't know anything for sure, but I know that nobody knows for sure. Right? We don't have
Well,
that tension.
yeah, yeah.
This is
Well, yeah,
monism over here. This is Christian dualism. God
well,
knows all,
there's a lot
creator
of,
creature distinction, creator revealer.
I think the biggest problem is, you know, there no one can knows for sure destroys every four for sure statements they have over there, right? Man's mind is limited, finite. No one
Yeah.
can know for sure. There's no God or he's inaccessible. Man's mind is sufficient. Those are all knowing statements, and they're saying no one can know for sure. So
Yes,
they're just being stupid, and they're stuck there. Like that's all they can have.
that's
It's
right.
like
They're inconsistent.
I can't say anything, but I feel like I should have an opinion and say all these things about this
Yeah.
outrageous political person that I don't like,
Yeah.
or you know,
Exactly. I think the shortest way to remember what a dialectical tension is the skeptic saying nobody can know anything for sure. That's going to remind you, okay, but you're
Even
claiming to know
that.
that.
yeah.
That's a
But it's like
dialectical
how no, you
tension.
ask them how do you know that?
If nobody knows anything for sure, then you wouldn't
I don't
make the claim. You wouldn't
know.
assert it. You couldn't assert it, right? If you're going to be consistent. The other one that I like
Never,
to
you
use
never would
out,
have come to the knowledge that nobody knows.
that's right. So the one I like to use, remember I told you out of all the preconditioned knowledge, I go straight for LSM, logic, science, morality. I go through all these dialectical tensions. The one I really like, predictability, unpredictability. I need everything to be predictable for scientific success, but science can't determine what I'm going to say next because I'm free. Uh-oh, how do I reconcile these? So that's what I like to show as a dialectical tension. You can read more of these. You'll notice in here, if you wanted to hear Greg present this to you, you go to his series GB222. It's Dialectical Tensions in False Philosophy. It's actually excellent. I've got pages of notes. This is just my extract of that. It's in his series, The Philosophy of Christianity. If you want to read it, Dr. John Frame's The Doctrine of the Christian Life covers this chart. So either source, excellent stuff. Question 120, what is the problem of the one and many? That's going to be easy for us because we spent time already on our universals and particulars. It keeps coming up. And so I'm not going to read that one. I want to move on unless there's a question with it. I think everything there is pretty straightforward. You'll notice at the end a reference to Van Til. Um, he, when you hear Van Til, one of his common illustrations is you got to, he says he'd be on the train with a young man who was studying and he'd strike up conversation and, he's like some advanced hard science field and they'd start talking about religion and Van Til would say, well, you've got to string all the beads together. And what he means is the beads are all the particulars and you
The
need you need
spring.
you need a one to put the beads together. And the
Yeah.
one is a principle of logic, which you can't see the ends of it, and the beads don't have any holes. There's no way to unify the particulars. He said you need to string them all together, omniscience, and you can't even string two. Right? So that's what he's doing when he's talking in his early 20th century idealistic way to somebody on the street about the one and the many. Okay, how can you respond to the claim anything's possible? God's the source of all possibility. You can read more on that. I want to go.
Well,
I want to go through empiricism. Most people are empirical, and some would claim to be empiricists. So let's remember that empirical is to learn from sense perception.
Let's talk about that for a second. You know,
Mhm.
why are most people empirical? You know, we know that all of us we have our technology, we have the same technology, right? We have
Mhm.
we have we have the same five senses, all of us. We share that in common.
Mhm.
And what so to expect them not to be empirical, uh, prior to conversion, or
Mhm.
prior to that regeneration.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is to be expected.
Yeah, everybody's empirical. When somebody says I'm an empiricist, that's more formally saying sense perception, observation is my ultimate standard, right? Whereas you and I believe in sense perception,
And
but it's not our ultimate standard. Our ultimate standard, we said we have a revelational epistemology. Being empirical and believing in things like induction would be a subordinate or approximate presupposition. You have an ultimate and approximate. And Van Til would make that distinction. In fact, if you listen to the Bonson-Sproul debate on method, Sproul brings that up, trying to understand the difference between an ultimate and approximate presupposition.
Um,
So, of course, we're empirical. We believe our senses are reliable, but we don't believe our senses are the ultimate source or ultimate standard of knowledge. Tristan, do you have something?
yeah, this is a silly question, essentially.
Mhm.
Uh, but it says the laws of logic are not known observationally. Is empiricism known observationally, or is it an abstract
No,
concept?
no, it isn't. Let's go through
So
the,
it's
let's
okay,
go
so
through,
that's
there's 12 points here.
self-refuting in a
Let's
sense
go
too.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why you don't want to be an
Mm.
empiricist. And yet many evidentialists, that's how they behave.
A lot of Christians argue this way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to look at the defects. Remember, we're always thinking about preconditions, what needs to be true for something else to be true. And, at this juncture of the Catechism, question 122, and based on what we've covered already, you're going to see references to the past of what we've studied. So, empiricism is the view that all knowledge is based on observation. Zoom a little bit for you. It has numerous defects. Few modern philosophers are strict empiricists. Number one, if empiricism is true, then we can only know particulars, not universals. If all knowledge is based on observation, remember
So,
our
We only know ducks. We can't know duckness.
we can see Huey, Dewey, and Louie. We can't see the category they're in. Okay. So, number two, the claim that all knowledge is restricted to observation is itself not observed. So, here's my ultimate standard. Whatever's true must be
There's
observable.
that dialectical tension, isn't there?
Yeah, and your very foundation of your whole theory of knowledge defies your theory of knowledge.
Mm,
Your own standard doesn't pass its own test, right?
right.
Okay. Number three, the uniformity of nature, which we call induction, is not observed. And no one has observed the future. And the uniformity of nature says the future is going to be
Like the
like the
past.
past, but nobody's observed the future. We've only observed the past. Okay. Number four,
And some would argue we haven't even observed the past either.
well, our recollection of it isn't the past, that's for sure. Numbers, laws of math, laws of logic are not known observationally. Pause. You get into your social media, do something, and somebody said I don't believe in your spaghetti monster sky daddy. What's the factual proof? And the buried assumption in there is that all existence claims are proven the same way, right? You go, well,
Observationally.
in the Bonsenstein debate, Greg opened up with the crackers in the pantry fallacy. If somebody made a claim that there were crackers in the pantry, how would you verify the claim? You'd go open the door to the pantry and you'd look, right? And you'd verify whether you could see the crackers. And then he went on to ridicule that position, that simplistic theory of knowledge, and called it the crackers in the pantry fallacy, meaning you don't prove the existence of love, beauty, logic, math, quasars, barometric pressure the same way you verify whether there's any crackers in the pantry. Okay.
Mm.
So numbers, laws of math, laws of logic are not known observationally. Empiricism destroys mathematics because no one has ever seen a number. We've covered that multiple times. You can express the laws of math or
Because it's
logic.
a universal.
Exactly. But you can't observe the laws of math or logic. You can express them. You can go get a geometry textbook and see some theorems and laws of math. You can express them in print. You haven't observed the law. Okay? Nobody's observed, as it says in the next one, moral requirements are not observed. No one, I say this frequently when I'm commenting because it's really easy to follow. No one has observed the requirement to be honest or kind.
Well, Christians get in into a problem here as well because no one's observed God today, right? Or most people today have not observed God.
Yeah, Christians don't get in a problem because they're not, if as long as they're not claiming to be empiricists.
Well, I mean, just like,
If I was a Christian empiricist and I said, observation's my ultimate standard, then yeah, I'd have a problem because I haven't
that's
observed
what
God.
that's what I mean is the Christians who are empirical in their argumentation are then assuming
Yeah,
empiricism, right?
yeah,
And so it's like, okay, so now you're denying God in your argumentation, which is not a
correct.
good place to be.
That's right. You don't want to do that.
They don't realize how much territory they're giving up by being empiricists.
By the way, one of these alone is a devastating destruction of empiricism. There are multiples. I mean, yeah, don't don't answer the fool this way. Personal identity over time is not observed.
Oh, did you go over five? Sorry.
Yeah, no one observes the requirement to be honest.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Then personal identity. If you read David Hume, he's really fun. Listen to Greg's lectures on um, British empiricism, which came after continental rationalism. So he does
This one, I have heard this one, Adam. But
personal
let's
identity over time.
yes, but let's go over that.
Yeah,
Personal identity over
I think
time.
it was Heraclitus who said you never step in the same river twice because the water's always moving, right?
And you're not the same person
Yeah,
when you step in it the next day that
yeah.
than you were the day before you, right?
You've
I
lost some skin cells.
I favor horror movies on Netflix. Personally, I have a dark personality, and I think that's probably why I like David Hume because he just scorches the earth. Uh, like he'll tell people, you've never observed causation. Everybody knows, oh, correlation doesn't equal causation, and we know what the fallacy of affirming the consequent is. Just because the rooster crows doesn't make the sun go up. You observe succession, you don't observe causation. In fact, here's a great one. So, Gabe, I know what the cause of cheese omelets is. You do, yeah. It's an alarm clock. An alarm clock? Yeah. My alarm clock went off this morning at 7. I took a shower, did my morning duties, got dressed, went out, cracked some eggs into a bowl, mixed it up, threw it in a pan, added cheese. The alarm clock preceded the omelet, therefore, the alarm clock is the cause of the omelet. It's the post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. After it, therefore, because of it. Many people argue this way. Hume comes in here and he goes, you never saw the cause. You didn't see a cause between the alarm clock and the omelet. You just added that with your mind. Because it preceded it.
The billiard ball.
What you observed is a succession of events, momentary sensation. I see the cue ball rolling, momentary succession, another perception, and then I see another ball. He said, you never saw the cue ball cause the other ball to go in the pocket. You added that. You don't
Well,
observe
wait.
causation.
Okay, that slow down a second, okay? Because I, I'm not contradicting what you're saying. I'm just
Mhm.
questioning for clarification.
Mhm. This is
I
as an empiricist.
hold on, hold on. When I see the cue ball strike the five ball,
Hmm.
the striking of the five ball. This I'm just thinking how I think
Hmm.
it strikes the five, and then the five is moving to the pocket.
Yep.
So when you say that to me, I I think, well, wait, no, I did see the cue ball
Yeah.
cause the five ball to sink in the pocket.
You saw the cue ball succeed prior to the five going in the pocket. You didn't see the cause. You didn't
No, no,
observe the
hold
cause.
on. So hold on.
As an
So if
empiricist,
I'm
you added the
watching,
cause.
if I'm watching, if I'm watching Tristan strike the cue ball,
Hmm.
and then I watch the cue ball strike the five, how did I not see? What is it that I'm not seeing?
You're not seeing the cause. You're not seeing
Well,
causation. You're seeing the succession of events, and I agree with you. The cue ball strikes the five ball, and the five goes in the
but
pocket.
Tristan was he was the cause.
No, no, no. So the cognition to cause the cause isn't seen.
That's correct. That's
The force that starts the series of events is not seen.
yes.
The
This is
decisions,
this is the
the motivations. It's like God creating the earth
it's
from the
like you not
beginning. You know,
observing a
he just
number,
was like
Gabe.
no, yeah, no one saw God like decide, oh, I'm going to make existence now. Boom, and then it was like
We're
it's
not
all there. We see
yeah,
that event.
we're not denying we're not denying
You guys are talking past me.
we're not denying causation. We're saying you don't observe it.
Well, I'm not talking past you. That's
No,
my
no,
response
no.
to like what I think is happening.
That's how it feels though, Tristan, that like in other words, the explanation is not it's not clicking with me.
I understand.
It's not your fault.
It's
It's
okay. There's a whole book that Hume wrote denying sense perception. Now he uses sense perception. He's an empiricist, crying out
but
loud.
look, I'm thinking like a typical person that we would talk to, right? An unbeliever.
Yeah.
Right. So
They, they
Well,
would
let
say,
me ask you this, Gabe. How much does causation weigh?
no, causation is a universal. It's an
That's
idea.
the point. We're not denying that it doesn't exist, that there's a concept called causation. Hume
Yeah.
is saying you don't observe causation. You observe
yeah,
succession of events, not necessary succession.
I
You
think
don't observe the necessity of the
Any
succession of
more than
events.
you observe math or meaning numbers.
Correct.
mhm.
And that's why I
Yeah,
use
but
the analogy of the alarm clock and the omelet. But I saw it occur first. It's
yeah.
not the cause of the
Tristan,
omelet.
finish that thought, Tristan.
Yeah, no, but I think Gabe, what you're saying is in trying to follow that example, someone might get a little lost as to like where the causation is versus, you know, the events, right?
Hmm.
Is that correct?
Well, I think what I was trying to do in my little devil advocate thing way was trying to understand what we were saying about causation. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that the point we were driving was that causation is a universal,
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
an
I'm
abstract
drawing a sim.
entity.
I'm not saying that causation is a universal. Oh, I guess cause is, yes.
It's
But
an abstract entity,
it's
right?
an abstract entity, correct. You don't observe it.
And that's what we need. So, you know, in future classes, especially when we bring on people that are even less informed than I am,
Yeah.
uh, we these are the things we need to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. One of the things with the pool ball example though, I think is like you saw me cause the pool stick to hit the ball, right? I was the
Use
cause
it.
before that. I was the cause before that. But the cause we don't see is why I did that in the first place, right? Or what led that action
What led
to take
you
place.
to do it?
Yeah.
Well,
exactly. That's
somebody's
all in
gonna,
my,
yeah, but
yeah.
somebody's gonna say, well, you agreed to have a game of billiard.
Yeah.
No, but I mean the decision to hit the ball the way I did, to make it hit that ball, like that, the reason that initiated that movement of my body, you can't see the cause of me deciding to like do that. That's
No,
what I
no,
think
because
is
that's all
intangible.
happening in your mind.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the point that Hume is making. These are
Yeah.
all micro perceptions. They're not connected. My mind is adding the connection. David
And
Hume gets followed.
Kristen is looking at the table, the
Hmm.
Yeah.
placement of the balls,
Hmm.
and his level of expertise or whatever, and he's saying, I can make that, or no, I can't. I better try this one over here.
We are
Right.
not,
Well, yeah.
we
Yeah.
won't exhaust this on this call.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm
No,
introducing
but
you
I think,
to
yeah.
Okay.
David Hume, Immanuel Kant, Rene Descartes. You're learning that people have wrestled with the simplest concepts, trying to justify them philosophically. And it's been really a challenge in the history of philosophy. They call it all the problems, right? The problem of induction, the problem of identity over time. And my worldview doesn't begin with empiricism. My world begins with the self-testing Christ who knows everything and reveals it. So when I talk about the cue ball and the ball in the pocket, of course there's a cost. I know I believe in immaterial abstract entities. I can justify that. But when you deny that, you end up writing volumes and you can't justify anything, right? And if you think that one was fun, spend time on number 7.
Well,
Substances are not observed. This is Rene Descartes. What is the unifying feature of all the attributes of an apple?
Oh, I love this one. I love this one.
You think in Descartes, the way,
Redness, roundness,
yes,
sweetness.
yes. Say, or you take like a university. You go, so where's the university? Where at Mount San Antonio College, Gabe? You go, it's here, it's the buildings. Well, those look like the buildings of the university, but I want to see the university. Well, it's the staff. Where? Well, here, come to the administration offices. Here they are, and then classrooms. Okay, that looks like the teachers of the university. Where is the university? Well, it's the student body. Let's go see yeah, that's the student body of the university. Where's the university? Substance, that which stands under. And Greg, in his History of Western Philosophy, talk about Descartes, refers to, and I think this is Descartes' analogy, is you have a pincushion, and the pincushion is the substance. It's that which stands under the attributes, and the attributes are the pins. Here's the roundness, here's the sweetness, here's the yellowness, here's Granny Smith apple. Where's
Redness.
the apple? Well, it's right there. It's the combination of the attributes. Yeah, I know, but those are just the attributes of the apple. I want to see the actual substance of the apple that's holding all those properties together.
Together.
You don't
Oh,
see the
yeah,
substance.
the tartness of the Granny Smith, right?
Yeah, you're looking at only attributes, but you never see the real substance. That's a mind-boggling thing the first time I
No, I
heard
know. I
it.
love that one. And I remember Greg talking about that.
Yeah, yeah. So you can study Descartes for that. Number 8. This is our universals: generalizations, class ideas, duckness, and categories are not observed. So causation is a generalization. Your number 9, the past is not known observationally as it is presently. Your mental picture of the past is not the past. Number 10, if only particulars exist, that was, remember, number 1 up above. If only particulars exist, knowledge cannot be shared because my experience of a particular is not your experience. Number 11, empiricism presupposes the normalcy of the observer. So drug addicts and detox patients hallucinate. The problem's the word normal. Nobody observed normalcy. Memory, number 12, predictability and objectivity are all presumed, can't be justified observationally. How do I know the observation I'm using to correct my illusion is not itself an
An
illusion?
illusion. That's
That was Greg's conversation with Dr. Gordon Clark when Dr. Clark said that the senses deceive you because, right, he was hardcore rationalist, which he referred to as a presupposition. And Dr. Bonson stood up and he said, but Dr. Clark, How do you know that the train tracks off in the distance that appear to merge isn't the illusion, but what you see when you're looking down is actually the illusion? They appear separate, right? So,
Because Clark was not a philosopher.
I think many would differ on that, but
No, I mean not like Greg. He just
yeah, you end up with
Right,
an
right.
infinite regress.
He wasn't a
Here's the summary.
yeah.
Christians should not align with empiricism because its self-refuting method destroys intelligibility of human experience. A defective method, epistemology, won't lead you to a reliable conclusion, a metaphysic, right? So your apology and your dogma, they need to um, coalesce, be consonant with each other. We're almost done. There's only two left, but any comments?
no, but we have to hurry.
7 minutes. So does God reveal all knowledge? I'm not going to turn the page. So I'll just tell you my experience. I think most Christians are deists in a lot of ways. You guys know what a deist is, right?
Yes, yes.
God is
As opposed to a monotheist.
as a it's where God is
No, a
only
deist right. Go
where
on.
God
Sorry.
is only transcendent. He's removed and other, and he's not immanent. He's not involved in the creation.
Remember the is it the watchmaker?
Yeah, William Paley's analogy of the watchmaker, right?
God
That
set
could
he made the watch, set it in motion, and then took off, went on to greater things, and just kind of left that thing ticking on its own.
and so the real question is, obviously the Bible has redemptive revelation in it. And so of course God reveals special revelation and redemptive knowledge. But does he reveal to a hardcore atheist, the cardiac thoracic surgeon or whatever, does he reveal to them uh, general knowledge, science, chemistry, the periodic table of elements? Like, is
He
God
gives them
revealing?
general knowledge, but he doesn't give them necessarily saving knowledge.
Yeah. So the question is, does God reveal all knowledge?
No, he does
So
not.
what is it called? Like, there's common
Well,
grace,
all
and
right.
then
So let's
there's
put it this
like,
way, Gabe, because
yeah.
I'm we're both speaking past each other on that. For all the um, for all the truths that people believe that are true, did God reveal it to them?
Yes.
Like, exactly. Yes. So let's conclude. Christians have a revelational epistemology. One asks, does God reveal all knowledge? Psalm 94:10. He who disciplines the nations, does he not rebuke? He who teaches man knowledge. You have a general statement that God teaches. When men have knowledge, God teaches it to them.
Exactly.
And I read this earlier in a previous lesson because we branched to it about general revelation. So you'll notice that at the very bottom, the quote from Augustine, he wrote, "There is no teacher who teaches man knowledge except for God." And
Mhm.
so the passage from Isaiah 28 is the one that sealed it for me. And that was this archaic way of ancient agriculture, you know, talking about the farmer when he is leveled its surface, does he not scatter dill, sow cumin, put wheat and rows barley in its place with emmer as the border? For he is rightly instructed, his God teaches him. So God's teaching the farmer how to farm. And then it says in verse 28, does one crush grain for bread? No, he doesn't do it forever. And 29, this also comes from the Lord of hosts. He is wonderful in counsel, excellent in wisdom. So whether it's the mundane details of farming or whether it's hammering out,
Redemptive knowledge.
yeah, hammering out what is meant by the impossibility of the contrary, God teaches all men knowledge. We've covered the fallacies, right? You guys remember what argumentum ad verecundium was? That was the Latin for an appeal, false appeal to authority. So the question comes, are all appeals to authority wrong? And the answer is no, they
No.
can't be all wrong because as Christians, we appeal to the authority of
Right.
self-attesting revelation, right? So if we reject God's authority, then we undermine the ability to make any aspect intelligible. And that is this week's study. Next week, and I'm really looking forward to this, is going through presuppositionalism in John Calvin. And we're going to have how many verses there? We will have, we're going to do questions 125 through 32. So 8 questions. And this will be fun because I think I quote quite extensively from Calvin. The first question is an awesome one. I probably rewrote this question 5 or 10 times. I read over and over Survey of Christian Epistemology content, as well as the Intellectual Challenge of the Gospel. If you haven't read those pamphlets yet, Intellectual Challenge of the Gospel, um, Why I Believe in God, those two right there are really good. And this question asks, why does Van Til say you got to be a Calvinist to challenge skepticism?
Hmm.
And it's a fascinating answer.
Okay.
Comparing Arminians with Roman Catholics. And then
Yeah.
we'll get into, scripture being self-authenticated in Calvin, other things like that. So let me stop the share, cancel the recording. Thank you very much. That was great.